Hello and welcome to another episode of the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. I am your host, Melissa Grosboll, and joining me today is Renee Herman. And Renee has been a certified nurse navigator for breast cancer patients for 6 years, but she's been a registered nurse for over 40. Excuse me. Now she's given me all of her credentials and I love it. And we're going to kind of she's been a nurse in so many different positions. She's done home care and hospice. She's been a charge nurse. She's been a hospice and bereavement nurse. She's been a float nurse and even a part-time school nurse in addition to others. She's got her BSN in nursing. She's got a master's in health services administration and a certification in care coordination transitional management. And she's a certified nurse in breast navigation from the National Consortium of Breast Centers. So her education and experience have given her a solid foundation in nursing, but it is her heart and of compassion and her servant's heart that has given her an enlarged capacity to care for those in need. Her strong faith base has grounded her in scripture and anchors her so that she can be a beacon of hope for those men and women for who she presently cares in the role of nurse navigator. Mm-hmm. She's been with her husband for 40 years, the mother of 2 and grandmother of 5, ages 1 to 5. Yeah. She's active in the community as well as a participant in breast cancer and other cancer support groups, and feels that her most important job as a nurse navigator, besides being an active resource for her patients, is as an encourager and support for her patients on their cancer treatment journey. So welcome to the show, Renee.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes. And Renee and I met actually through a breast cancer support group. She is the facilitator, and I had my treatments at another hospital, but they don't have much of a cancer care program. And Renee works at the hospital that is close to my home, and I have absolutely loved the support group, and I love Nurse Navigators, and I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes. So I really want to go into detail, and I'm just going to say for the record or whatever that this isn't going to be an episode about medical advice. This isn't going to go down that road. What I love about Nurse Navigators is the support piece, the resources and support, and how important a nurse navigator is to anyone going on this cancer journey, just because of the overwhelm and need for that extra support. So can you kind of share with us, just in a nutshell, really what a nurse navigator does for those people who might not know?
Sure. So I actually had to even look up a few definitions just so I knew exactly what I am, in my role doing.
But really, what you do every day that you don't know how to put into words.
Just in case I'm not doing it all. Gotcha. A nurse navigator is really a healthcare professional, and then specializes in whatever it is that they're going to help navigate. So for me, the specialty would be oncology, cancer nursing, and breast care patients in particular. And one of the things that is unique to our program is that I actually do call some of the breast diagnoses, most of them actually. And so I meet the patient right at the inception of, I'm sorry, you have cancer. Don't always say I'm sorry, but it is. It's one of those shocking diagnoses. A lot of women are somewhat prepared, either, when they have their biopsy, or, a lot of women just have this gut feeling it's going to come back positive. So they're not totally shocked, but there is that, oh my goodness, this is a call I never wanted to get. And so a nurse navigator is actually one who then I help them understand what the diagnosis is. I go over the pathophysiology of the anatomy of the breast and cancer. And then most importantly, I help them with next steps. So I guide them, what are the next steps? You've gotten this diagnosis, what's next? And then along with that, I offer a face-to-face education. And this is where I love to meet with them, their support person, and actually go over the education. I actually, at that point, a lot of times introduce who the providers on our team are, and that would, pretty much include a lot of the services that you get during your course of treatment, but especially the surgeon, the medical oncologist. We wouldn't know at that point if a radiation oncologist was needed. So that is a person who's not a part of the initial consultation. But, I often that's where we start the genetic testing process. So there's a lot of things to go over. And when they meet with me, I actually give them a book. We use Judy Neese's The Breast Cancer Treatment Handbook. And one of the other things that's unique to our program, I believe, is that we actually walk through the book with them. A lot of patients will get that book, and I've heard from friends and actually family around the nation that this book is very commonly used with breast cancer nurse navigators. But the common comment that I get is, it was given to me to read. And I just feel like with an overwhelming diagnosis like breast cancer, somebody needs to walk through it with you. When I just briefly go through these chapters, I actually mark them with a little Post-it note. I give you a pen if you were my patient and say, start marking it up. This is your book. And it's a workbook and it has great information in it. But I let you know from the beginning where there are some things you might want to go back to. And some of that includes looking at a pathophysiology of the lymphatic system. What's lymphedema? You might hear that word. I want you to know what that is. It's looking at the breast, where exactly would your cancer reside? Show them that picture. One of the things I like to do from the beginning, because everybody's worried about two things right away, is one, am I going to have chemotherapy and lose my hair? And I don't do treatment. I'm not a junior doctor. And even though I might have a suspicion as to what's going on, I let your medical oncologist really chat with you about that. But I give you the chapter and I show you, kind of where a port might be if that's what you're going to need, where some of the drug information is if that's what you're going to need. The surgeon, I don't, even make a guesstimate as to what your surgery is going to be. But I do show you what a lumpectomy versus a mastectomy is. So I feel like what I try to do at the beginning is take the mystery out of everything that's a preconceived notion in your head, and get those ideas out on the table so that we can kind of walk through them. I have, the opportunity at that point, one-on-one, to kind of ask where there's might be financial needs, might be what we call social determinant of health needs, which includes food insecurity. I mean, there are people who come in and they're homeless, or we have people come into our program who've come from another country and they don't speak English, and so I need to work on that and let the team know what some of those needs might be. I have people who are young, women who are young and have children. And I say people because we do have males who come in with a breast cancer diagnosis and females, the majority of which are females. But many are young and many have young children. And they're like, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to tell the kids. So I present them with information that I have and how to tell the kids, where they might be in their emotional and psychological process as at certain ages, which everybody's very appreciative. I have books that are excellent that have been written by cancer patients. I have books that have been written by professionals, but who have addressed, what kinds of things do I need to do to support the kiddos? And then, along with that, I actually have, an opportunity at that time to tell them kind of, what our multidisciplinary team is. If you have underlying chronic diseases, we're going to need to let our medical oncologist and surgeon know. If you're on a blood thinner, let's say you can't walk. Maybe you're in a wheelchair. We're going to need to talk about what kinds of functional things we need to help support you with so you can get the treatment. Can you get an MRI? I help them understand what a breast MRI is, which, as we all know, is a lot different than an orthopedic MRI because you're on your stomach. So I try to take, the surprise element out of a lot of these things. And then I actually show them where a table of contents is so they can look up additional things. And then that actually becomes a great teaching tool for us down the road. If you find out that you're going to have a mastectomy and you have all these questions, I have you get out the book when we're on the phone, we go over it, or I have you come back in and we talk about some of the things that you might need different to support. So at the onset, a navigator is to, I believe, give you information about your diagnosis, help you with next steps, and then moving forward from there, help you to know where you might get resources, even for yourself.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's just the beginning because, as I said, we cover all the way from diagnosis all the way to survivorship. And survivorship is technically defined as 6 months after the finishing of your active treatment, whether that's chemotherapy, surgery, radiation. And some women are still going on with a year-long chemotherapy. And so then it's 6 months after that. But, that's sometimes when the dust settles and you need me more than you needed me even at the beginning with your initial diagnosis.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to go more into. And for those of you who've been following the podcast, I had very little of that. I couldn't even tell you who my nurse navigator was at my hospital. And I don't know, for me, like when I went through it, when I was diagnosed, having a medical background myself, my thing was, all right, how quick can I get it out and be back to my normal life? So I sometimes say that, no, I didn't have any of that, which I really didn't have any of that. But sometimes I wonder if I wasn't looking for it because it was back here and I'm like, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. I know enough and I'm just going to go. Or if the program wasn't as extensive, in my hospital. But either way, like the fact that people like you exist just warms my heart. Good. Because, like every one of us who are cancer survivors, we remember where we were when that phone call came in and what we were doing. And, to have someone like you who just understands that and understands where people are going to be in the emotional roller coaster that they're going to start on, just to be a voice of calm and compassion and letting them be whatever they're going to be through this whole process. Like, wow. Well, so thank you on behalf of all of us for being, a part of this journey, with us all, because
you're welcome. One of the things,
like, it's just immeasurable how important you guys are. Probably more. I mean, the surgeon and all that's important, but for the emotional support piece, like that's just immeasurable. What you guys do.
Well, yes, and I appreciate that. One of the things too, I think, Melissa, is that I don't think people know what they're missing when they don't have one.
Yeah.
And I think
exactly.
you
like mentioned, I hear you talking about it and I was like, man, I never had any of that. And wow, I didn't know what I was missing.
There's just these little tips. I think what happens in a lot of women is that the breast cancer diagnosis comes and everything else stops. You only have a small window to actually take in information after you hear the word cancer. And so I think it's, so important to help somebody be able to say, take a breath. Do you want somebody else on the phone? Do you have a pencil and paper? And often a physician doesn't have time to do that. But that's my job. I have time to do that. There have been times where people answer their phone in the car and they're like, oh no. And I'm like, we do need to talk, but let's have you pull over. Let's have you get home. Do you want to talk to somebody else? I'm here and I'll stay. Here's my number. Sometimes they'll say, I can't even take any number down. Can you call me back in 15 minutes? I think that starts the process. I hope it starts the process of them understanding that the program we have is very patient focused. We want to make sure that you understand what's going on, that you feel safe, that you have somebody who's trustworthy, and that you feel as though you are being taken care of. And it is interesting. I love meeting with people. And I have people who will say, I'll be over there in an hour. Will you be available? And if I can, I say, yes, come on ahead. If they say, can I come tomorrow, or I can't come for the next 3 days? I'm like, fine, we'll make it work. We'll find a time for you. And then I set aside an hour. Most people don't take more than an hour, but I set aside at least an hour and just say, you might need 20 minutes. No one ever does. But I will give you that full hour just to ask anything. And I'm telling you what, Melissa, by the time they leave, they've walked through this book with me. They have a completely different idea of what cancer is as diagnosed as breast cancer. Most of them take a breath and say, you know what? You have given me hope. And there is, I told you at the beginning, I use a lot of scripture, and there's a scripture in Proverbs 29:18 in the Bible, and it says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And that's the first half of the verse, but I want them to see the other side. Right now, your first question that you're asking yourself is, will I die? Right?
Yep.
The cancer word, will I die? And to have somebody talk through with you and say, oh my goodness, breast cancer right now is more treatable than it's ever been. We have more survivors than we've ever had, and you will get through this. We'll hold your hand. And, unfortunately, it is a fact of life. We all die at some point, right? Mm-hmm. But as much as it is on our watch, we're going to treat this cancer and get it out and get it treated so that you can be on the road to getting back to whatever your normal is at that point.
Now what, I guess, because you've done so many different things in nursing, mm-hmm. what led you to this piece of nursing, becoming a nurse navigator? Just of all of the other things that you did.
Right. That's a great question. In nursing, you can get special certifications, whether you're an OB nurse, dealing with delivery of babies, or whatever it is, an orthopedic surgical nurse. And my certifications in what we call care coordination and transitional management. I've always been very interested in this vacuum for patients between the inpatient setting and home. And we've been doing so much. It used to be that you'd have surgery and then you'd stay in the hospital for some, inordinate amount of time, many days. And then even if you needed rehab, you go to rehab. This going home stuff is relatively new in the last many years. What goes around comes around, let's put it that way. But I did home health care. I've done hospice. I've done bereavement. I've seen so much of this that I recognize that your diagnosis of breast cancer is not a one and done. It's on the continuum of care for your wellness for the rest of your life. And I want to get you back into the home setting. I want to get you back into the community. We want to get you back into living your life the way you want to live it. And so I did case management for a while, which also was, had that kind of mindset. Let's get you home. Let's get you set up. Let's get you independent in what you're able to do for your own health. And when this job opened up, because my background was also oncology, it just seemed like a perfect fit. And so much of it has to do with resource gathering. And I've always been a huge proponent of things that are happening in our community. And just like you and your program, you're seeing that women who go through something like cancer, often on the outskirts of that, have something to bring back to the community, and especially the cancer community. And so I love to connect with them, and I'm a connector, I think, by personality. So this was just a really good fit. I had a funny experience because when I interviewed for this job, one of the doctors, she said, well, you are a really good fit for this. She said, I have one question. And I said, what's that? And she said, you've done hospice and you do realize our patients live. And I started laughing and I said, yes, and that's the beauty of it. I would love to be a part of that, helping them get back to living a life that they want to live. And so this just worked out really well.
And from what I've seen, you are a perfect fit for that. And you are also you are involved in community and other resources and stuff. And you were the facilitator for this support group. And I know you're coming back to your job. You took a little bit of a pause. Will you be coming back to the support group as well? Or has Krista taken over?
No, well, no, I think one of the things, it does become an all-encompassing position. And I've had hundreds of women, many of whom continue on with the support group. Some of them say, hey, you know what, Renee, I loved being a part of it, but I'm going on to this part of my life. Some women have other chronic disease issues. So they're saying, you know what, cancer's now in the shadows, and I'm ready to go on with whatever my other chronic disease is and be a part of that support group. But yeah, I'm coming back. I can't imagine not doing it.
And then you also talk to me a little bit about resources that not necessarily specific, but resources that you offer, your patients and stuff, to whether it's community things or retreats or other resources. What kind of things do you offer to your patients?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one that is always evolving. And so I make it my job, even outside of having seen patients, to find out what's out there to support what needs you have. And so, for instance, this podcast, for those who want to know that other people are talking about cancer, what's going on, you would be a great resource. In addition to that, community cancer groups, they're around the world, actually. Some communities have a lot more handle on it than other communities, but there are fantastic resources out there. The National Cancer Institute is international, so you can always go online. It's NCI, capital N, capital C, capital I. They have a lot of literature online. There's also, of course, the American Cancer Society. They have a lot of literature online. A lot of times when we first give a diagnosis, my first inclination to tell patients is, please don't go searching on the internet for every last thing you can find. And really, that is that's so crucial not to go out there.
Stay away from Dr. Google. That's what we say on here.
Absolutely. WebMD.
Because you're dead in 2 days if you go down those rabbit holes.
Yeah. There's just too many blogs out there, too many opinions. I'm all for it. I've watched them. I know what's out there. There's some good. There's some iffy. There's some discouraging things, some very encouraging things. And you know what? Part of my job, if I feel like that's the direction you're going when we meet, I need to tell you a few things that are available for you to look at. And then that way I feel like I kind of guide you in the right direction. Breastcancer.org is a very reputable breast cancer site you can go to. I think I have mentioned before, and I think they're international, triagecancer.org. It's a great for cancer rights, navigating employment, finances, knowing what your rights are. There is a ton of stuff, the cancer support community. And I would say, because of the internet, which is an amazing resource, people from all over the world can get on there and find out information. And so I think part of the community resource thing is not only what's online and what you can read, but also what's available to you one-on-one so that you can actually touch something. And there are equine therapies. We have one here in this area called Hope Held by a Horse. We have respite programs, Damas Pachas. There are other ones out there. Image Reborn is a national program. There are a lot of, there's a fishing one, Casting for Recovery. I mean, there's epic expeditions or epic experiences. Live by Living is an outdoor event. I mean, there are so many. I wouldn't even have you footnote them. It would be way too long. But I think for most communities, they have something called a cancer coalition. community network. And so it would be a good Google for that to find out what kinds of things. I think there's a Gilda's House, which has supplies and things for cancer patients. Of course, Komen, has the walk every year. So there's a lot of resources out there. Some that, you don't know about right away. Churches have, cancer groups that meet. I just think there's a lot out there. And as a navigator, I feel like that's one of my jobs one of my roles is to have that kind of information available to you. So if you come to me and say, I want a prayer group, then I'm going to say there are prayer groups out there. One's called Never Alone. I mean, there are Christian groups that provide blankets. There are meal trains that provide meals. There's a house cleaning coalition that will give you 2 house cleanings or 3 while you're going through chemotherapy. I mean, so there are things out there, and I love to find out what they are. And so if somebody comes to me and says, I need somebody to take care of my dog during surgery, oh my goodness, that's where I love working with our healthcare team. I'll call our social worker and I'll say, dogs, we need to find a dog sitter, a dog walker. We need to explore this. And, that's been a lot of fun for me. Frustrating at some point when there isn't something in somebody's backyard, but usually we can find something to help support them.
Okay. And that's part of your job. And I love that.
Yeah.
Because people don't know where to look.
Right.
And they're so overwhelmed with everything else that's probably the last thing they're thinking about until, oh my gosh, I didn't think about this and I need this. So that's wonderful. So I want to move on. We really talked a lot about the beginning, like the diagnosis and the next steps and getting through all of that. And you mentioned it before. Let's talk about survivorship, because I think this is something that I didn't really realize, that once you've had your treatments, your job doesn't end with these patients. And so talk to us about the other side of it and what you do for people during survivorship.
I actually pulled out a few books because I just wanted to make sure people knew what might be available to them. The NCC, which is for the, I always forget what NCC stands for, the National Comprehensive Cancer Network. And that's NCCN. They have survivorship care for cancer-related late and long-term effects. There's another through the Cancer Support Network, the American Cancer Society. So survivorship has become something that's a lot bigger than we knew in the past. What happens to a lot of patients, Melissa, is that you get the diagnosis and the first thing on your mind is, am I going to die? Okay, now we're telling you, you know what? We're going to treat this. You're going to survive and you're going to do well. You start getting next steps. You get the MRI of the breast or whatever system is got cancer. You see the doctors. You get the surgery. If there's radiation involved, if there's endocrine therapy at the end involved, whatever is going on, chemotherapy, and then you're done. And that's when, I think
you bang the gong or you ring the bell,
exactly,
or whatever
you ring
it
the
is,
bell,
yeah.
And it puts a period on it, for the healthcare team. But that's not the end. And we follow you because we want the follow-up scans. We want the follow-up appointments to continue on, just to make sure as surveillance goes on and screening for other areas. In the breast cancer world, we say you have to go back to women's wellness checks. All these things that you forget about because cancer took the front and center stage, right? Now all these things that you put on the back burner, we want you to start getting checked out. So survivorship starts this period of, what do I do now? Now I'm not seeing you as frequently. Now you're telling me to go back to my primary care physician. And so this transition piece for a lot of people comes as a shock. They feel a little bit like, I've been under your umbrella and care all this time. You've been available to me. And this is where I also love my position, because I don't feel like I have to cut you off. You can still call me and get additional information. I will encourage you to get involved in a support group if that's what you feel like you need. Some people need some mental health support at that time. There's nothing wrong with that, but it rears its head, especially in survivorship. You have been going to appointments. You have been doing this, and now you're tired. And all these emotions are starting to flood. And this is a good time to kind of take stock in, how's my family reacting to me? What's going on beyond just my own personal care? And so sometimes that's when it's really good to call a Nurse Navigator and say, who do you have for behavioral health? Maybe for me, what support groups do you have for my husband, which we are still lacking in. Not just husbands, partners, support moms who have children with breast cancer, or young daughters with breast cancer. But, that's a big part of it. The other thing is, too, as we start talking about survivorship, and I talk to a lot of partners about this when they're in my office, even at the beginning, I'll say, as we go on, we're going to want to deal with the whole emotional aspect of it. And remind me, I want to just tell you about that so people don't forget about the stress level with a cancer diagnosis. But along with that has to do with sexuality. Okay, what's my body image like now? Okay, now I know I'm not going to die because you've taken the cancer out, we've been treating it. And this is where somebody has to, look in a mirror and go, hi, new body. I haven't wanted to look, but now I do, because we need to get to know each other. What I had in my head as to what I looked like before is not what I look like now. And we need to get this head image that this is all kind of integrated in who we are now. The other thing is, like I said, sexuality. Some of the drugs create issues that you probably had somebody on to talk about that, but we can talk about that. We can talk about intimacy, getting into a sex therapist if that's needed. The fatigue level is huge, because this is the time when they're like, okay, my cancer diagnosis is done, my treatment's finished, I'm starting to go back to work, and I am exhausted. And not only that, I'm not being shown the grace anymore. And now, instead of people asking how I'm doing, they want to know, what kind of surgery did you have? Well, it is really none of their business, but you're dealing with a lot of things that you weren't dealing with before. And so survivorship, to me, is a time when you take somebody's hand and you say to them, take a breath. What is it going to look like to get back to whatever you were doing before, if you can do it? And most women can. But what do you learn from this? What do you want to do? I have a woman who paints rocks. She painted them before she was a breast cancer survivor, and she's painting them like crazy afterwards. But her rocks have taken on very positive affirmations. So I have one here that says, if you get tired, learn to rest and not quit. Okay, that's what I need on my desk. Other people need other affirmations. She's this rock painter who can do that. I have another one where I have a magazine article from a lady who wrote about being a strong warrior. Well, that's amazing. So it's something else I can put out there. Along with that, I think in survivorship, not only is it about finding out what are you going to do going forward. And I will just say this, let me just give this little disclaimer. I think as women, we're very hard on ourselves.
Really?
Yeah,
No.
surprise. You have a baby, and then you get right back into your normal size pants, and somebody's like, oh, that's amazing. But what about the person who doesn't and never gets back into that same size pants? She's still a mom. She's still a great mom. She's still a wonderful, strong woman. We have to affirm that. And so if you've had breast cancer and out of this came, I got through it, I'm going back to work, I'm still a good mom, I'm still going to the soccer games, but maybe I'm not painting rocks, or maybe I'm not doing a podcast, that's okay. You're still a strong woman. You got through this. You belong now to a sorority you never wanted to belong to, But as a result of this, you might have something to give to somebody else, like a hug or an encouragement. My sister went through endometrial cancer, and so it's been kind of interesting because I'm a survivor of breast cancer too. And one of the things that's been interesting is she said to me quite a bit, you have all these pink ribbons. She said, I don't even know what color ribbon is mine. And, I have to say to her, we still need to support each other, and that's how we're doing it. What are you doing today? How's life been? Did you get your follow up? Did you, my first mammogram, 6-month mammogram, by the grace of God, one of my patients who knew I had gone through breast cancer myself was at the place where I was leaving and I was able to say to her, I just had my first mammogram, and give her this huge hug. I mean, I went and told my husband, gave him a hug. It was great. He was so excited. But there was something there that you can't explain when somebody else knows what it's like to get your first clear mammogram 6 months after you've had breast cancer. And that's what survivorship is about, is connecting people who say, I get that. Can I take your kids today? Because I remember being dead tired when I got home after radiation 3 months later. Or, hey, can I gift you with some cream? Because I know after radiation you might have it. I mean, these are the kinds of things that make this whole idea of women in society so exciting, and how we can help one another. I'm 3 months further along than you. And that's what survivorship is. It's the rah-rah to everybody who's on the sideline saying, here's a cup of water, keep going. You finished, but you need that 6-month mammogram. Keep going. It's going to be okay. And I love that part of it. And I think we really miss that in the medical community. It isn't just, this is all we've done for you medically. The other thing is too, and I think we talked about this a little bit before, and that is, when you are a survivor, but then you get a recurrence, which doesn't happen very often, I think we need to really encourage each other in that. Everybody's biggest fear is to get cancer. And once you've got cancer and you're treated and it's gone, now it's recurrence, right? But we need to encourage one another about that, there is a lower percentage of recurrence than there is of not having a recurrence. We just need to remember the cup is half full. It's much fuller that way. But, along the pathway too, as we're encouraging one another, we need to remember that we all need that one up. We all need that. And that's what survivorship to me is all about.
Oh, that is beautiful. Because I think a lot of us tend to feel like, okay, your treatments are over, go have a nice life. And then now what? The doctor's appointment after doctor's appointment after doctor's appointment. And then all of a sudden, like, what do you mean I don't have any appointments this week? Mm-hmm. So I love that you are still, and Nurse Navigators are still a resource for people, on the other side, because that's so important. And the mental health, and that is huge. And I had a woman on a few weeks ago who really talked about that, and having a specialization in mental health, treatment for cancer patients specifically, that wasn't really a thing until recently. So, once again, so grateful for you. And now you are on. So most people that I interview, they had a cancer diagnosis, and then now they've changed their lives and are doing something in the cancer realm as a result of their diagnosis. And you're kind of the opposite. You've been in the cancer realm for 6 years, and then you were faced with your own cancer diagnosis, breast cancer diagnosis and stuff. So now you can really, understand what all of your patients have gone through, unfortunately, because you've kind of gone through it yourself.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing in your head is, why not me? I'm a woman. I have breasts, and, I think one of the things that has helped me is that I did take my own advice, and it's good advice. And I did take it. I think what's hard as a medical professional was reading. I read people's pathologies all the time, and I explain them to them. To see my name on it was absolutely surreal. I was like, why is my name on this? That should not be happening. I did a professional courtesy to all of the people who took care of me just to double check and make sure they were fine treating a colleague, which they were. It's a little bit harder, I think, to keep it private and to feel private, because this doesn't have to be everybody's business, right?
Right.
And I think that was one of the cautions I give people is in this world of post-COVID, one of the things that's happened is everybody feels they have a right to know what's going on with your health, and they don't. They do not at all. And I've seen a lot of violations taking place with people sharing other people's diagnoses. And I will say my team did an exceptional job of really helping me keep it private. But two things are interesting, and I was going to go back to this. There is on the stress scale, the death of a family member, an accident, car accident, cancer, surgery, radiation. And your body naturally responds in a fight or flight autonomic response. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that it can lead to on this whole cycle of stress is exhaustion. And I think there's one thing that I learned more than anything else, having gone through it. And the first thing is that stress factor is real. And there's going to be times when you're going to fight and you're going to think, who was that? Kind of like that hangry commercial, but it's not treated with a candy bar. This is real. And you are going to have times in your journey as a cancer patient when you are going to be like the bear who came out of the woods and you are like, what happened? But remember, your cup is so empty at some point that all you can do is fight. There's other times where you're going to take a blanket, throw it over your head and say, please don't talk to me, don't touch me, don't bother me. And that's, that other flight. I want nothing to do with people. I just need to cocoon on my own. Both of them are very real. And I think more than anything, my husband gets a gold star for having grace, the people I work with, for understanding some days I had a short fuse, things that weren't normally like me. And it makes me sad. But one of the things that in survivorship for me, I'm going to start looking at is, how do I get past those regrets? How do I work on forgiveness? And not forgiveness just for everybody else, but, forgiveness for myself, grace for myself. It's very, very real. And then I think the other thing that I realized is that the financial burden of cancer is very real. It's huge. And for people who have always had a job and who have good insurance or who are married to someone or have a partner who has good insurance, it's very well taken care of. But there are those who have an extraordinarily high deductible that they need to pay out, an extraordinarily high out of pocket. And if you're young and relatively healthy, you're going to get a cancer diagnosis and pretty quickly thereafter have a huge deductible to pay for. And that's difficult. And at the same time that you're not feeling well and are tired, they're asking you to fill out disability papers so you can take some time off work. So for those who didn't have that, it doesn't lessen your experience of breast cancer. You still had an enormous diagnosis that needs to be dealt with and worked through. But when you add on childcare or a chronic illness or finances or fatigue, it becomes a lot bigger. And I think for me, I've gotten through it well. I had great support. I mean, oh my goodness, the support group was more. It was a fan club. I couldn't ask for anything more. My family was great. The people I work with were great. We have a physical therapist who deals with lymphedema and other things. My care team was great. I am very, very grateful. I told you I held on to the anchor for scripture. I have 3x5 cards of a stack like this of things that I wrote down as positive affirmations and scripture so that I would just keep myself anchored. And I did. My church prayed, obviously. But I think more than anything else, what has changed my heart as I deal with other patients and what has made me a better navigator, I think is just a certain amount of empathy. When you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, because there's always that shadow, you can know that you're not alone. And I guess that's what I want everybody out there to know. There is hope. You are not alone. And I wish I could be everybody's navigator. I already told you, you can call me anytime. But find somebody. There's people out there who will love on you, who will help you. And I guess at the end, I have one of my favorite rocks is right here. And I put this on my desk too. All is well. You know what? There is something so comforting in somebody just saying, all is well. And it can be falling apart around you, but if you have somebody else to hold your hand and just say, all is well, we're here, you're not alone, you're going to get it together with help. I think that's what I learned. People really do help you, and all is well.
Oh, and that is a perfect spot to end with all is well. I love that. And I love everything that we've talked about today. And just thank you so much for being you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all that you do for so many in the community around here. And I know that your words are just going to touch so many people out there, knowing that they're not alone,
right,
and that there are people like you out there who can help them.
Oh, good. Thank you, yes. Melissa. So
thank you so much for being with me today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.